what I'm really interested in is not the teacher training or curriculum or school structure, but things that outside of school walls. Why? Because like you said, I've gotten a first-hand experience in educational systems in 3 different countries. And so I don't know it from the book, I know it from my own life that education is embedded in cultural, linguistic, political, religious, geographic, economic circumstances of the country. It makes it fascinating, it makes it unique. When we're looking at any two systems, they may be different, but similarities are as exciting as differences are. There was different because the schools are very, very small, and we went to one school, for, unless you move where you live. It was from first of all, it was 10 years in my time, and then they switched to 11 years. It's still not 12 years like in the rest of the world. So Russian system is still 11 years. And so it goes for 9 years of primary school and 2 years of high school, essentially. And the schools are very small. They are residential mostly.
This is even in a major city.
Right.
Like the major city.
Everywhere. So another thing to take into account is to what extent the system is decentralized or centralized. Like the United States is an example of extremely decentralized system, meaning not only state, by school district, and even school has an autonomy to decide what they're doing, how they're doing it, how they go about teaching different things. Other countries such as Russia, such as Israel, such as South Korea have highly centralized system, meaning there is a Ministry of Education that to a great degree prescribes curriculum and exams and how transition between primary and secondary education happens and things like that. Again, it's not to say one is better than another. It's just we need to be mindful, what does it mean? What does it mean in that particular context, and what are the consequences of it? In the Soviet Union, because it was planned economy, so the government prescribed how many engineers we need in each industry. So you had a Ministry of Chemical Engineering, Ministry of Civil Engineering, Ministry of Agriculture Engineering, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Culture, Ministry of everything in Moscow. And they decided how the industry, the entire industry works, and how many, try to assess how many experts they need. And so the institutes, what we call colleges, or now universities, were especially designed under those industries, and they prescribe exactly how many people they would, they tried to come up with the formula, right? The system in which I was educated and the system in which I graduated high school and went to college was a very prescribed system with about 20% of population receiving higher education. And because Soviet focus has always been on military, STEM was basically the core. So you had many more people who would graduate with the degrees in math and science and engineering compared to, let's say, humanities or social sciences, right? So social sciences were really only minimally developed, and I think it's again changing. It has changed over the last 30 years, but definitely I think Russia had to almost build it from scratch, because Russia has enormous tradition in math and science, and it was almost absent in social science. Another difference is U.S. portfolio. It's a portfolio-based admission, right? So people write essays, talk about extracurricular interests and sports and music and leadership. Nothing like that in Israel, nothing like that in Russia. The transition from secondary education to higher education is entirely based on academics. It's your high school diploma and whatever the exam is in place. So Israeli system is much. So coming from Israel to the U.S. in terms of education is a smaller shock than coming from Soviet Russia to Israel, I would say. The key word here is a choice, because when I was in school in Soviet Union, there was no choice. There were no different, you couldn't choose courses. It's very prescribed. Everything was very, very prescribed. So you either, if you go after 8th grade in Soviet times, now it's 9th grade, into academic high school, this is this is your choice, or vocational or professional, right? But once you in this sort of high school, there are no choices of the classes. There's no variety of classes, right? Whereas in the U.S., obviously, the kids have the choice which classes to take, in what sequence, and how it works. In Israel, you have a choice. It's right in the middle. So you have a choice which courses to take, but then you need to be mindful to get to the finish line with certain credentials that will allow you to go further in school.